Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a Brazilian attorney. I'm here in Rio de Janeiro, and today we're going to be talking about the role of escrow accounts in Rio de Janeiro real estate transactions. The first surprise is there are no escrow accounts in Brazil, just as there are no title insurance companies in Brazil. In the US, usually a title company is also the same company providing the escrow account. So think Chicago Title Insurance, they are going to provide you insurance for the title. So if you buy a bad title property, they are going to pick the tab, you're not going to lose your shirt, and at the same time, they are going to guarantee that the seller is not going to get the money unless the seller signs the transfer deed. So surprise, surprise, neither title insurance or a escrow account exists in Brazil. So what do you do? For the title insurance, the only option is to get a really thorough due diligence done, because if you buy a bad title property, nobody's going to pick the bill, and good luck suing the seller if something happens. So getting an extremely well done due diligence is usually the answer for the lack of title insurance. Regarding the escrow, that's actually more concerning because there is simply no escrow. What happens is that law firms like ours, we try to emulate the escrow account by assisting with the currency exchange and holding the money until the last minute, until the day of the closing, until the time the sellers are going to the registry to sign the transfer deed. Once we know everything is on track, we're gonna give a call to our partner bank and say, all right, release the money. So that's like a kind of poor man's escrow account. There is no escrow accounts in Brazil, but through a partnership with the bank handling the currency exchange, we are able to hold on the money until we know that the seller is actually attending the closing. This is usually how it's done in Brazil, and even more surprisingly is that most foreign citizens, when they buy at least like lower value properties, they are not going to even use like the type of escrow I just described. So they are going to run a substantial risk by simply transferring the funds into the seller's account and hoping that the seller is going to attend the closing. Because of the due diligence, we know that the seller is actually, a law-abiding citizen, right? It's not being sued for fraud and this type of stuff. But there is still a risk, like when the seller gets the funds a week or a couple of weeks up front, in advance of the closing date, there is always a risk that something is going to happen to the seller. We are all human beings, and maybe the seller is going to have a heart attack or is going to, be in a car crash. God forbids, if this person dies, you're going to be entangled in a probate in Brazil. And unfortunately, probates in Brazil may take decades to resolve, and you don't want to be in this position of paying an attorney for 10 years to have title to the property. Also about the escrow, it's important for you to understand, you may be asking, why would I pay a seller with 2 weeks in advance? Can I just wait until the last minute to do so? The problem is you may very well make a wire transfer from the US or from the UK or from another country in 5 minutes, but the money does not go directly to the recipient, to the seller. Instead, once the money reaches the seller's bank, the bank is going to retain the money and is not going to release until a very thorough examination of the transaction is done. That's the so-called compliance. Brazilian banks, by law, they are expected, they are supposed to run a really thorough analysis of the transaction. They are going to ask for a copy of the deed, they are going to ask for a copy of the contract, they are going to even review the tax returns for the seller and the buyer. And only after this thorough examination, they are going to release the money. So nobody can tell up front how long this process is going to take. So that's why whenever you are handling the transaction without a law firm like ours, you're going to need to send the monies way up front, because otherwise the money is not going to arrive on time for the closing, and you may be facing penalties of 10%, sometimes 20% of the property value, in addition to the damages caused to the seller. So this is really serious stuff. That's why realtors, when again you don't have a law firm like ours, they are going to tell you, oh, you should send with a couple of weeks up front to make sure that the money is going to be released. Otherwise, the seller is not going to sign the transfer deed. Even in our firm, we always know that sellers do not sign the transfer deed unless the money is in their pocket. So in our practice, what we do, we simply reduce the time gap between the money going into the seller's pocket and the transfer deed being signed. We reduce this time as much as possible, usually to a matter of 1 hour. 1 hour from the closing, we know that the seller is driving to the closing, and then we call the bank and ask the bank to start the process of releasing the funds. Well, I hope this was enough to give you an idea about the escrow challenge in Brazil. If you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to us. I hope you like this video and follow us for more.